Hello, guys, gals, non-binary pals, survivors, scrappers, and other. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Lab. I'm your host, DJ Squared, and with me is my co-host,
Harper.
And seeing as my own personal day of reckoning is at hand, and so is basically everybody else's on campus, we're going to be talking about the end of the world.
Because that's what it feels like right now.
That's what it feels like. And for, all of the students on campus right now, or at least a large number of them, it is the apocalypse. The zombie apocalypse. Because they're playing humans versus zombies. Which is a game where you just run around on campus, and some of you are humans, and some of you are zombies, and the zombies are trying to eat people. So.
Nerf guns, socks, all sorts of projectiles.
Marshmallows too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird actually, because the thing is that, in Atlanta, or on tech campus, we're not supposed to have, or it must have been changed recently, because I know back when my sister was, here and doing it, they weren't allowed to have Nerf guns, because it's a gun, and you're inside Atlanta.
Right.
So.
Urban area, fake gun.
Wearing bandanas.
Not a great look.
No. But I have seen people running around with Nerf guns this year, so that must have been
It was
lifted,
changed, yeah. Exciting.
So, terrifying. But I'm not playing this semester, so
Have you played before?
no. Actually, I've been too busy.
Yeah,
Either that or I just miss it,
I just observe. I watch the people do ridiculous things and laugh to myself.
Don't worry about it. Alright, so, what's your favorite apocalypse?
My favorite apocalypse.
Yeah, just that you've seen, in media. Top three.
The thing is, I was going to say I don't know that I have a favorite because I don't know that I like it that much. Because I think there are elements of the grotesque, and I think you're meant to be disgusted a lot of the time. And so it's I can maybe enjoy a story, but at the end be I didn't like that. That made me uncomfortable. And so all the things that I have read or watched make me uncomfortable the whole time. I was assigned one, I think my senior year of high school, called Blindness. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I have not.
It is by Jose Saramago, I don't know that I'm saying that right, who won a Nobel Prize in Literature after writing this book. And it's about this epidemic of blindness, and they're all quarantined in an asylum. And then there's this hierarchy of people, and the leaders start just raping everybody. And then keeping the food, deliveries to themselves and starving people out. So eventually rebels, burn down the whole place. And they realized that the entire outside world had fallen to the epidemic and that they'd been quarantined for no reason. And the whole world has been destroyed. And it's just the most depressing thing with very detailed sexual assaults. And so I'm sitting there, 17, reading this why? Why am I reading this?
Why is it that the end of the world comes with so much sexual assault? Is it just, if you want to hammer out how horrible this is, there are other ways to do that.
Cannibalism is a popular one.
Cannibalism is a popular choice. But, personally, would take cannibalism over sexual assault.
This is just why I don't like it. It's there's so many grotesque things where I'm this is just gross.
But, the thing is, they could also have, resurgence of deadly diseases.
Yeah.
The bubonic plague, the leprosy. Mm-hmm. You could just have the entire world end via leprosy. But, no.
It's humans being terrible to other humans.
Always. Except for when it's humans being, if you've ever seen any of the Planet of the Apes movies.
I have not.
The reboot is actually very interesting. Because the reboot of the Planet of the Apes starts, with humans and their, genetically engineering chimpanzees. So it starts with the very, very first hyper-intelligent chimpanzee. His name is Caesar. Like you do. So the reboot series goes through this ape takeover, this apocalypse. And the thing is, though, is that you feel for these apes. Like, well, by the way, I forget it. Tom Felton. Tom Felton is in it. He plays Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
He plays a little shit who, like, tries to beat up Caesar. So
he's a little shit in both
Yes.
things he's been in.
Yeah, he's apparently very, very good at playing the little shit.
That's the only thing I remember about him, is that he's awful in Harry Potter.
Like, his characters are awful.
Right.
Apparently, he is a lovely person. I don't know. It's like, I don't know, I've never met him.
Right.
But anyway. So yeah, and, like, you really feel for Caesar, especially, you feel for Caesar, like, as a protagonist, which is very interesting, because all of the antagonists are humans. So, that's just sort of an interesting look.
Is that your favorite?
Apocalypse. That one's one of my favorites as far as, sort of, the apocalypse that, like, how do I say this? It's an apocalypse for humans, but it's also, like, the creation of a new world. So, like, I find that very interesting, and, like, that happens occasionally, but not as much as I would like, because those are very interesting. And also no sexual assault.
When you said that, it made me think of something that I would call my favorite.
What?
And it's something I've read this semester in the science fiction class, and
Excellent.
it's R.U.R. by Karl Čapek. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. It is a play from the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia, but it is what coined the term robot, but it is apocalyptic, because the robots take over and kill all humans, but then they have no way of reproducing. They don't know how to make more robots, and so at the end, they hint at this couple discovering how to reproduce biologically, naturally, because these aren't mechanical robots. They're biological beings that have no soul. But I would call that I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites, and it is definitely apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's just like, that's the thing about apocalypse, is that you kind of, like, where to draw the line.
It's hard.
What's apocalypse and what isn't. Because, like, there's plenty of stories that take place after, like, World War III that I wouldn't consider apocalypse stories. But World War III is generally, like, a big theme for apocalypse stories.
Yeah, because you have to look at the distinctions between dystopias and the apocalypse, but also disaster fiction.
Yeah.
Because it is a hard line.
Yeah, they all sort of, like, squish together in
and there can be
weird amorphous shapes.
Elements of dystopia or it can be a dystopia and a post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic. Yeah.
Or pre-apocalypse. Like, the dystopia leads to the apocalypse.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what is pre-apocalyptic? Couldn't that be anything?
I mean, technically, but, like, I feel like anything that you would consider pre-apocalyptic would be, like, something that's directly leading to an apocalypse. Like, maybe, like, the first book in a trilogy or something. Like, first book, lead up to the apocalypse, second book, apocalypse, third book, reconstruction.
Okay.
You know. And, like, I always find it interesting how hopeful some apocalypse stories are, because there's generally that reconstruction at the end. Like, I haven't seen it, but I've read a lot about Mad Max Fury Road.
I have seen it. I'm going to be the only person to have ever said this, but I hated it.
No, my dad did too.
Okay. Everyone I know loved it. My brothers went and saw it like 4 times in theater. And I, 5 minutes in, looked at my boyfriend and said, I want to leave. Like, I could not stand that movie, but we stayed for the whole thing. I sucked it up and watched it, but I will never watch it again. Nice. It is just not my vibe. It is very stressful.
Reasonable. And, you know, sometimes it's just like that.
But it does have hope in it. And there's feminism in it, and there are things that I think are distinct from some of the other apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic stories. It had good elements. I think it was mainly the music that I did not like.
That's fair. And then there are the stories that you don't like, or at least you don't know it's like post-apoc because it's like so far past whatever apocalypse happened. Like, I actually didn't know until I was like doing research for this episode that maybe I just didn't remember that Forbidden Planet, my favorite science fiction movie, or my like oldest science fiction memory, is actually post-apocalyptic.
I'm not familiar with that movie.
It's Forbidden Planet is this movie where all this like military ship, and apparently it's a military vessel, like, and they're trying to scout out new places for humanity to live because, or no, that's not what it is. Like, the Earth's dead, Earth's gone, and all of these ships have like colonized different planets, and this is the military ship, and it's like checking up on these other planets, and whatever. And they find this one planet where people keep going missing. Like, they send ships out here every once in a while. People don't come back. But there is a settlement there, is the thing. So the ship, like, lands, and we find out there's 2 people left, and a robot, a very sassy robot. His name is Robbie. I love Robbie. And there's 2 people there, and they're just fine. Everybody else is dead. So it's this, and there's like a monster on the planet, and yeah, so everybody else is trying to figure out what the monster is and how to get off the planet with these 2 people before the monster like destroys them all. And it's just, it was a fun time. And apparently it was post-apocalypse, either that or like current apocalypse with, the giant monster that's destroying everyone.
Why not both?
Why not both?
It can be both.
And that's fun. The ongoing apocalypse.
Yeah.
It just keeps rolling.
Current life.
Same. Yikes.
So, another one that I feel like I've brought up before, and I think you haven't read, is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Have you?
I have not read that, and I don't remember you ever bringing it up.
I feel like I did, but I don't remember why. But it is a very depressing book, as are most post-apocalyptic. It's interesting. They have no character names and very minimal grammar in the book. And, of course, my English teacher in high school said that there was a reason, a deeper meaning to having no grammar and no names, and it was like showing how society dissolved. And so it's a father and a son, and they're wandering around the destroyed planet, and they never tell you what the catastrophe was. They don't tell you why the world ended, but there are cannibals, and they're trying to escape these cannibals. But you keep coming upon these, like, terrible images. They meet this pregnant woman, and they're kind of, like, a sketchy group. And they get away from them and then find, like, a day later, I don't remember, a newborn baby roasted over a spit.
Yikes.
And it's a cannibalistic society. So it's just, like, horrible things. But this whole time, the father has this terrible cough and knows that he's not going to survive for very long and has to teach the boy how to commit suicide if it came to it, to escape the cannibals. And it's just like the most grotesque, depressing, post-apocalyptic thing. That was another one I was assigned in high school. And
You were assigned all of these awful books in high school.
Same teacher who assigned all of them. And I'm sitting there like, man, it's either this or Wuthering Heights, though. It's like, at least it was somewhat interesting.
I've heard that Wuthering Heights is like the worst
exactly.
book.
I might pick post-apocalyptic and grotesque over Wuthering Heights. It's long and there are multiple people named Catherine. It's confusing.
So you're saying there's an abundance of Catherines?
Yes.
Get that John Green reference in there.
I didn't catch that.
Maybe somebody in the audience did. I don't know. But, and that's one of the other, like, I do like it. sort of when there's mystery involved, when they don't exactly tell you, like, yes, everything's terrible, but we're not gonna tell you why. It's like, this is not, everything's terrible, the world ended, but this story is not about that.
There were hints, like everything was covered in ash.
Yeah.
So then you wonder, was it a volcano? Was it firebombing? Was
it nuclear war?
Right, what was it? And so they're like picking up apple cores that are rotted under the ash and trying to eat the apple core for nutrients and things like that. So you're sitting there like, well, if everything is covered in ash, then, probably nuclear war, but I don't know.
But I digress. But one of my favorite book series that is sort of like that, like, world ended a while ago, but people are still living, and this story is not about what made the world end. It's called Incarceron, and the fact that it's, like, post-apocalyptic can sort of get lost, because it's about this kid, he's trying to escape from prison, but it's like, the prison's alive, or it has some semblance of being alive. He, like, stabs it once, like, the manifestation of the prison itself.
Or did he shank it?
Might have shanked it. The prison manifested itself as this giant dragon in a cave. But the thing, and, like, most of the people in the prison, there's, like, two types of people in the prison. There's the people who know that they're prisoners, and then there's the people who do not know that they're prisoners. They don't know that they're in a prison. Because there's, like, this conflicting imagery of Incarceron. People who were thrown there as prisoners, they know that it's a prison. But some people, like, believed Incarceron to be this, like, perfect utopia. And so they, like, traveled to Incarceron. Like, everybody outside Incarceron wants to get into Incarceron because they think it's the perfect world. Everybody inside Incarceron wants to get out because they're prisoners. And the prison itself is trying to eat them, among other things.
Why do they think it's utopia? Do they just not know anything about it?
It's been, it's been idealized after a while. Like, the only people who really know is the warden, the person who has the key to Incarceron, or maybe actually has Incarceron itself. It's kind of unclear whether or not Incarceron is... There's this tiny little cube that the warden takes with him everywhere. And that cube may or may not be Incarceron. It might be like Time Lord magic, in which there's an entire world encased in this itty bitty cube.
Or a way to control it or something.
Yeah. That part was kind of unclear.
Yeah.
So yeah. Main character gets out of Incarceron with the help from people who are outside Incarceron wanting to get in.
Trade places with me, will ya?
No, that didn't actually work. It was unfortunate.
Why wouldn't that work if they think it's utopia?
It's more of a one-way trip. So he got out. They can't get in.
Okay.
So now, like, the second book is about him having to try to fix the outside world. It's very interesting.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. And also, he may or may not be a prince. Still unclear.
Weird twist.
Yep. Gotta love that secret royalty trope.
I know.
It just happens.
So another thing that I do think I like, since I said I didn't like apocalyptic, but I'm changing my mind as we talk about it, Godzilla. Because that's post-apocalyptic.
I mean, giant monsters are generally
well, it's created after the nuclear war from the radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that definitely is post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic themes, and it's bent on destroying Japan.
Yeah.
Later on, it helps save Japan, but...
Don't worry about it. I mean, like, maybe it was just that Japan was the closest thing at the time, like...
And it was bombed.
Yeah. Like, maybe if Godzilla had been closer to, like, the Philippines, it would be a different movie.
Yeah. Oh, look at this nice pet I brought home. His name is Godzilla.
Don't worry about it.
He's nice.
Don't worry about it. That is a 20-story tall lizard. Don't worry about it.
It's my pet.
And like that's the thing, like giant monster movies like that are definitely sort of like apocalyptic, like Pacific Rim. That's straight up an end of the world story.
I just heard of that for the first time yesterday.
Oh my gosh, you need to see Pacific Rim.
Well, apparently the second one just came out and is in
it
theaters.
It was great.
Oh, you've seen it already?
I very much enjoyed it. But I was one of the, like, okay, Pacific Rim is one of those things, you either love it or you're just kind of meh about it. And that really comes from perspective. Like, where you're going into this movie. Because the thing is, Pacific Rim, those movies know exactly what they are. And what they are is basically a live-action anime movie. It's giant robots versus giant monsters. This is what you're getting.
That sounds pretty interesting. I don't know.
It's, but yeah, it's definitely more of an, like, even though it's live action, it's definitely got, like, an anime feel to it. You've got this, like, you've got a lot of anime tropes in it. It's really the glory of the group instead of the individual. Because the thing is that to pilot these giant robots, you need at least 2 people. So this movie series is all about, like, encouraging cooperation between people to take down a greater evil. Which in this case is aliens that send giant monsters to try to destroy us.
So it's monsters, aliens, and robots.
Well, the monsters are aliens.
Okay.
The monsters are actually, basically, like, we built giant robots to fight these giant monsters that the aliens built. Like, these aren't normal aliens, they are constructs.
Okay.
That they sent through, like, this breach in the Marianas Trench. Like, it's not intergalactic, it's more like interplanar.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's a breach between the worlds at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, which is why it's called Pacific Rim, because the monsters can come up out of the ocean.
Okay.
Which is sort of...
I don't know how I hadn't heard of this.
Yeah.
Somehow missed that one.
Super fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I was one of those people who was just like, yeah!
When did the first one come out?
Like, a few years ago? I don't actually remember. I'm terrible with dates, is the thing. So, I can look that up. But yeah, no, if you're just in it for giant monster fights, and some teamwork, and some really cool, special effects, it's a good time. But, if you're in it for, like, great cinema, why are you here? It came out in 2013.
Okay, not too long ago.
No.
I'm going to see a sci-fi movie this weekend, and apparently everyone knows what it is, but I had never heard of this one either, and it's Ready Player One.
Yeah, I've heard about that one.
It was a book.
Yeah.
And it's like polarizing. People either absolutely hate it or absolutely love it.
I'm, like, from what I've heard about it, I'm in the former category.
Okay.
Because, I mean, like, the movie, at least the trailer, looked different than what I'd heard about the book. Because what I'd heard about the book was basically it's it's a book about fans, but, like, curative fans. So, like, this, I don't know, really, I'm pretty sure that the plot summary goes something like this really rich dude, he leaves his fortune to whoever can complete this, like, virtual maze that he created, and the way to get through the maze is by going through various like properties, but you know, like, it's like you're being put into the position of Neo in the Matrix, and you have to do everything that Neo does perfectly.
Okay.
Like, you can't deviate from the script at all. You deviate, you lose.
So that's where all the references come from, because everyone's like, oh, it has so many cultural references, but it's too many. And
And yeah, that's the thing. It's not what I love about fandom, which is, you know, the transformative aspect. It is curative straight through.
Okay.
If you don't know everything there is to know about all of these properties, then you're toast.
Okay.
Is the thing. So, Like, when there's no room for change at that point, then you're just rehashing what was already in those properties. It's like playing the game, how much of this other property can I put into my book before it's sued for copyright infringement?
Okay, yeah.
Or at least that's what I've heard.
Right. I've seen some hate for it on Reddit.
Yeah.
But I'm going in with an open mind. I haven't read the book.
I mean, the movie does look different.
Yeah.
Or at least the trailer looks different than what the book summary is. So, you know, I'm still not going to go see it, but you can...
Well, I didn't pick this.
Oh.
I'm just going with someone, so...
Mm-hmm. If you would like some good science fiction, I would suggest A Wrinkle in Time.
Yes.
That was very good.
I also haven't read that book.
That's fine. It got real weird real fast. Like, I did read the book, but I read the book in, like, middle school.
Is this the one with Oprah in it, or was that something else? Okay.
This is the one with Oprah in it.
So it's, like, the mostly female cast and production and everything?
We got, like, 3 or 4 dudes in the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fine with me.
I mean, like, it's got Oprah and Reese Witherspoon and, like, all of these other people, and one of the dudes is Chris Pine, so...
That's a very, very weird mixture of people.
Exactly. It's fantastic. I loved the movie. And it did do some of the creepier aspects of the book really well. Like, there's this one scene where they're on this planet that's, like, the intergalactic hub of darkness and evil. And they get down onto the planet, and, spoiler alert, I guess. It's, they get down onto the planet, and there's this neighborhood. It looks like one of those stereotypical 1950s neighborhoods. It's incredibly technicolor. And you see all of these identical houses, and out of the identical houses come identical kids. And the kids all walk out of their houses, and they stand exactly the same distance away from their houses, and they all have this bright red ball that they bounce in time. And that goes on for a while, and it's very scary. Like, it's incredibly unnerving.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. But, and also the fight in the giant brain. That happens. There's a giant brain!
Another spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, giant brains. The book's been out for I don't even know how long, so...
I think 40 some years now, but I don't know. I can find out.
With the power of Google. That's the real potion. That's the real apocalypse.
Turns out I'm not connected to Wi-Fi, so I can't find out.
I can find out, though. But that's the real apocalypse. Google goes down. We're all screwed. Okay, no, I wanted the book, not the movie, but thank you. The movie was very good, and it's still in theaters as of this recording. It's from 1962.
Okay, so
it's like
56.
Yeah,
56 years.
Published on January 1st.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, yes, 56 years.
Yes. Like, we could go into how many days, but I don't feel like it.
Yeah, me neither.
Months, days, whatever. No one cares. No one cares. It's fine. Which, that one isn't really an apocalypse. I mean, it might be an apocalypse in the main character Meg's world, but... that's a bit small scale for apocalypse stories.
Yeah, from what I read, apocalypse, the world pretty much has to end for it to be an apocalypse.
Yeah.
I read that the catastrophe must be real, not merely a threat, in order to be apocalyptic.
Yeah. Like a giant asteroid hurtling towards Earth.
Because I had thought of a perfect example, and then I realized that it wasn't, because there was like this happy ending, and the world hadn't ended, but The Comet was a short story we read this year in class, and it is by W.E.B. Du Bois. I think it's Du Bois.
It's French, who knows?
And basically, he is a black man in, I want to say it's in New York, and it's segregated. And he's I think he's a servant in a hotel. And he is sent down to like basement chambers to get something, I think a book. And while he's downstairs, Halley's Comet goes past and everyone in New York dies.
Yikes.
And so he comes out of the basement and everyone is dead but him. So he thinks he's the only survivor of the apocalypse. And so at first he's kind of freaked out, and then he realizes, I can do what I want to do now. And so he goes and he eats fancy food at fancy restaurants that he would have never been able to go to. He takes a car, I think a convertible, and he's driving around New York, and he would have never been able to do that. And so it's an odd story. And then he finds one woman who's alive, and it's a white woman. And so then they start this weird thing where they're like, we're going to be Adam and Eve, and we're going to start the whole human civilization over again, and, you know, we're going to be the ones to do it. And then it turns out that only the people in New York had died.
Yeah.
And not even the state. I think it was just the city of New York.
But that seems very, very in character for anyone from New York. Sorry, that was rude.
But the girl's father shows up. And then their immediate thing is, okay, well, let's lynch the black man because he's with our daughter.
Yikes.
And that's how it ends. It's like the most depressing thing. But I thought, oh, that's post-apocalyptic. But it's not, because the world did not end.
It's a post-apocalyptic microcosm.
Yeah, in his world, it was the apocalypse. He thought it was.
I mean, granted, if everybody in New York City just dropped dead like that, except for you, it would probably take you a while to figure out.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, it would before the internet.
Exactly, because this was, you know...
Yeah.
I don't remember when it was written, but there may have been radio, but there wouldn't have been that much media.
Mm-hmm. It's like how,
It was written in 1920. So maybe before radio.
Yes. No, I think radio exists then. At the very least, primitive radio does. Look at me, I work at a radio station. I don't know the history of radio.
I don't even know how to find that.
When was radio invented?
I know. As soon as I said that, I was like, yes, I do.
It's like, hold on a second. It's been a long week, guys.
1895?
Huh?
1895. But I don't think that it was, that was when it was first invented. That's not when people had access to it and was using it. But it said...
when was radio popularized?
DJ coming up with all the good search words.
Yes, well, I've got to be useful for something here. I only get paid so much. Actually, I don't get paid for this show at all.
Arrived in the United States after 1945, and it was not popularized until the 1960s in the United States.
But I think they still had it in the 1920s, especially just because, I don't know, it features a lot in 1920s era movies. I don't know.
Here's a Wikipedia page just about the 1920s and radio.
Nice.
I think it was just used in war at the time.
You mean The Great Gatsby lied to me?
Another book I haven't read.
Oh,
I wasn't assigned that one in high school like everyone else seemed to have been.
Yeah, no, seriously, it was very popular.
Well, I had that teacher who instead just gave us depressing post-apocalyptic novels.
Hey, look, the reason I didn't take AP Lit is because the teacher kept... I saw the book list that my AP Lit teacher had, and it was all, tragedy, Holocaust book, tragedy, Holocaust book, other, genocide books, and I'm just sitting here no.
Yeah, that was an AP Lit where I had all of those super depressing books.
What is it with, the AP boards and just not letting anyone have any fun?
Well, the thing is, it's not even really the AP boards. I'm pretty sure the teachers have free range on that, and they get to pick the books that they teach, within reason.
Yeah.
But we had to take home, like, consent forms for most of these books.
Yikes.
And, of course, my parents wouldn't do any research and would just sign it and be like, whatever, we expect you to let us know if there's a problem.
Yikes.
And I didn't. I just read them.
Sounds about right. No, I saw the book list, and the only one that wasn't, like, some sort of tragedy was The Importance of Being Earnest.
Yeah.
And
we read that, too. Yes.
Yeah. And that was not enough for me to take that class. Because I love The Importance of Being Earnest. But the rest of the class would not have made up for the rest of the class.
I'm trying to think of other things we read, but it's been a long time.
Did you read The Kite Runner?
No.
Because my teacher, or the teacher that did the class did that. And my friends with depression were not happy campers.
I know we read Brave New World. We did not read 1984, though, which was another popular one in high school.
And another post-apocalyptic one. Because,
Is it?
yeah.
I thought it was just dystopian.
Like, I'm pretty sure the dystopia comes... Well, like, the thing is that in the plot of 1984, everybody within their society thinks that they're, like, constantly under attack from everybody outside their society. So it's like a military state, but we don't actually know if anyone exists outside of this society. So it might just be them, and the government powers are just trying to keep, like, a stranglehold.
Yeah, that sounds very dystopian.
Yeah. And it also might be post-apocalyptic because maybe everybody else in the world's just gone.
Right.
So, I can't remember if Fahrenheit 451 is post-apocalyptic or not. I know it's dystopian.
It came up in my research, but that's another one that I have not read.
I did, actually. I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember if it was post-apocalyptic. I actually really enjoyed Fahrenheit 451. It was, it was definitely interesting, and it also sort of was more real for me because, like, the entire thing was about information, specifically books. Like, you're not allowed to have books, is the thing. And since no one's reading, no one's learning, no one's growing, no one understands that the society they live in is garbage. So, and that's just, and, like, whenever they find anyone who somehow does have a book, they burn down their entire house. So, definitely dystopic.
Definitely. I don't know about post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic, but I can find out.
Yeah. And, like, the title comes from, like, the heat at which paper burns.
Right.
So.
I know I saw a special copy being sold where the spine of the book was, oh man, I don't know what it's called, but when you buy matches, there's that thing that you strike on the side.
I think it's just, like, called, like, the strike pad or something.
Okay, well, the spine of the book was the strike pad, and then it came with matches.
Nice.
And I thought that was really cool.
Kind of
Obviously, you don't want to light it on fire. That defeats the purpose of the book, but...
Oh, man, I love that, like, somebody went up to Ray Bradbury and was like, hey, can we put Fahrenheit 451 on ebook? And he was just like, no, close the door in their face.
Oh, that's something I hadn't even considered, but...
I mean, that also, it's like, you have missed the point of my book. Goodbye.
Yeah, but at the same time, if it's on ebook, maybe more people would have access to it and would read it. Mm-hmm. I'm not an ebook person, but I'm not completely against it if it gets more people reading.
I like the ebooks that we have, like, access to via the library.
Yeah.
So, don't have to carry around all of these books.
Even public libraries in your counties have access to ebooks and audiobooks and DVDs and all sorts of things. And so I log into the Forsyth County Library with my card, and I can get so many different ebooks on my Kindle, which I do have one and rarely use. But but it's very neat. So everyone look into public libraries if you don't go to a university with a library like ours.
Man, when I was little, I used to raid the DVD shelves because I didn't like to read until I was in 4th grade. I was tricked. I was fooled into it.
We didn't really have TV or cable when I was growing up. And so we had like a couple VHSs and we watched them over and over again. One of which being James and the Giant Peach. I've probably seen 200 times. And then like some Rugrats stuff. And so we didn't get to rate the DVDs. And so we had like an allotted number of books that we could get each week. And so we read a lot. And mine was mostly Nancy Drew. As I've mentioned before, I have like 100 Nancy Drew books in my bedroom.
Hey, good books. Huh? So, but not post-apocalyptic.
No, I know.
It's unfortunate. And that brings up, like the whole libraries thing sort of brings up, like what the things that become important in some sort of post-apocalyptic society, because if humans survived, that generally means that at least some of our stuff also survived. That'd be really weird if only biological things weren't affected. So like, what becomes important when the world ends? Like, I love seeing those speculative fiction posts online where it's just like, yes, this library is considered a neutral zone. No one attacks the library. The librarian is immune, or like has a free pass to go wherever they want in the city. And so, and probably in any post-apocalyptic world from like here on, books are probably going to be very important, because if it's post-apocalypse, that probably means that there's no internet.
Yeah, I was going to say, books are digital information if it's still around.
Yeah. I mean, like, if an EMP kind of, like, knocks out everything in the world, then there might be somebody whose Kindle was off at the time, but who knows?
And then everyone would get a little bit dumber without the internet, without the ability to go Google immediately.
Yeah. We all keep our brain in a server. But
I think that there are definitely apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic works where nothing has survived other than the humans, but I think in those instances it's when they go to like an underground bunker and all of Earth is scorched and burned and nothing survives.
But still, that's sort of like, if they have an underground bunker, they must have at least thought far enough, like,
food
to what they're gonna bring with them.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know how, I'm pretty sure everyone's been asked the question, if you were left alone on a deserted island, what would you bring with you? So it's like, if you're planning for, if you know the apocalypse is gonna happen in like the next 24 hours, what do you bring with you? What do you take with you to the underground bunker, or the ship that will get you away from all of the zombies or something? Do you remember to bring books? Do you remember to bring your favorite stuffed animal?
I don't think I would. I think my mind would be entirely on survival and things like water and food or medical supplies or something like that. I don't know that I'd be...
And then you'd get super bored. Because
you would, but then maybe you'd write your own books.
I mean, like, I really do feel like in a post-apocalyptic universe, large groups of, like, people are going to start rewriting their favorite stories. That was actually, another one of my favorite post-apocalyptic movies was The Book of Eli. Like, because I just really like all of those trade information for whatever, and like not necessarily like blackmail information or whatever, just some knowledge that you have to people who are archiving it, because there's always going to be archivists. There are going to be people who are trying to preserve some content that has been created. Post-apocalyptic libraries are definitely going to be a thing.
Even if only orally, because that's always been a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, the Book of Eli was just, like, that was his, that was what he had to trade. He had a book of the Bible memorized. And that's what got him safe haven in the end.
I had no idea that's what that was about.
Yeah. Yeah. This guy's wandering through a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and he's trying to get to safety, and the only way you can get to safety is if you have something that they value. And in this case, they value knowledge of things that have already been created. So, like, they're trying to recompile the Bible, and he's got one of the books completely memorized, so that's his ticket in.
Okay. Honestly, had no idea. I thought it was a religious movie.
No, absolutely not. It's also very good. It was so good. I should watch that again. But,
It sounds pretty interesting.
It was definitely good times. Well, not exactly. Well, it's an apocalypse movie. It's not exactly good times, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. It was fascinating, interesting.
It's fascinating times.
Thought-provoking.
Yes.
Not necessarily fun.
Yeah. Just also the cinematography, just like the stark. It feels cheap to say the stark beauty of it, but that's exactly what it felt like.
That reminds me of something we talked about in class today. We're not necessarily talking about apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic things, but we're talking about the grotesque versus the sublime. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we were talking about is in watching film to look at the colors in the film. Mm-hmm. And so reds and yellows and browns and oranges might be more grotesque if it's somewhat gory or, gross grotesque. And then natural earthy greens and like happier colors might be sublime. But I think also dark grays and blues and things like that can bring the sense of how depressing some things like apocalyptic movies. It's all very dark and there's no green trees. There's nothing, amazingly beautiful about the earth. It's all going to be dark and gray and black and brown and bloody. Mm-hmm. And so colors, music, things like that are good to pay attention to when you're watching apocalyptic films.
And just films in general. I actually really enjoy darker subject matters, mm-hmm. but they have like this really bright color palette. It sort of throws the entire plot into like a sharper relief, really, because like when you're talking about like terrible subject matter, you're used to seeing all of these like dark colors and deep shadows and really sort of grainy and gross scenes. So when everything is like super high contrast and bright and cheerful looking, that just makes the atrocity like so much worse.
Do you have an example?
Hold on. Have you ever seen anything made by Brian Fuller?
Mm-mm.
He did Hannibal. He did, Pushing Daisies, which actually Pushing Daisies is...
I have seen that.
Pushing Daisies is like... Exactly. Like, Pushing Daisies is very, very bright and colorful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except for, like, the entire premise of the story is the main character bringing dead people back to life and then killing them again. Like, you don't really... Like, the horror that he must be going through as a person is kind of overshadowed by the bright colors and everything. But then you look back on it and you're just like, wow, that's kind of effed up.
But that is a good example. It is a very bright and colorful show. And it is, that's a great example because it makes you think. Yeah, it makes you think about it.
Like if you, the bright colors, like while you're seeing it, you're not like conceptualizing the sort of psychological horror of what this person must be going through. But yeah, if you look back on it, like, and you're just sort of looking back on it like analytically, you're just like, holy, that's you okay there, buddy?
I think, I don't know that I can talk about that one because it might be a spoiler for a TV show that is currently airing its second season on NBC.
Yeah.
The Good Place?
I love The Good Place. No, the season 2 is already over.
Okay.
Season 2 is already over. Season 3 is coming out probably in, like, September?
Okay, so safe to talk about?
I adore season 2 of Good Place. Yeah.
It's bright. It's colorful. It's comedic.
It's full of dead people.
But you also find out it's not really the utopia you think it is.
Yeah. And, like, what about all the times that they are, spoiler alert, all the times that they kill Janet?
Yeah.
Like, you're just...
And she's begging.
She's not...
I have 3 kids!
Like, the psychological horror of the anti-Janet kill switch is, kind of impressive. Yeah. The Good Place also gives me a lot of Pushing Daisies vibes.
Exactly.
It's brightly colored and it's about dead people.
Right. It's got dark subject matter. It's done comedically, though. Mm-hmm. But it's so bright and colorful and so happy at first that you're like, oh, this is great. This is refreshing. And then you're like, oh, wait a second. They're all dead.
Some of these characters are literal demons.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
It is...
Yeah.
It's just a refreshing change, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if all apocalypse, like, imagery was, like, bright and cheerful, then we'd all get sort of weirded out by it.
Yeah.
But I do like those sort of changes more. I also like it when you can actually see what's going on in the movie, because some of those scenes get a little too dark. As in, like, visually, you can't see anything.
Or when the music is too loud and too grungy and you can't hear anyone.
You don't know what's going on. Or one of the movie tropes that I hate is when, like, a character loses their hearing for a little bit and then it's just the buzzing.
And the screeching noises, like the tinnitus.
It's the worst. Stop doing that.
I know, I sit there and I'm like, oh my god, is this me? No, everybody looks like this. It's not just me.
Yeah. It's gross and no one likes it.
It's painful, literally.
Mm-hmm. But, that's the true end of the world right there. Just can't hear anything. So, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yes, I would love to read a poem for you. It's an apocalyptic poem written by Peter Porter called Your Attention Please. Your attention please. The Polar Dew has just warned that a nuclear rocket strike of at least 1,000 megatons has been launched by the enemy directly at our major cities. This announcement will take 2¼ minutes to make. You therefore have a further 8¼ minutes to comply with the shelter requirements published in the Civil Defense Code, Section Atomic Attack. A specially shortened Mass will be broadcast at the end of this announcement. Protestant and Jewish services will begin simultaneously. Select your wavelength immediately according to the instructions in the Defense Code. Do not take well-loved pets, including birds, into your shelter. They will consume fresh air. Leave the old and bedridden. You can do nothing for them. Remember to press the ceiling switch when everyone is in the shelter. Set the radiation aerial. Turn on the Geiger barometer. Turn off your television now. Turn off your radio immediately the services end. At the same time, secure explosion plugs in the ears of each member of your family. Take down your plasma flasks. Give your children the pills marked 1 and 2 in the CD green container, then put them to bed. Do not break the inside airlock seals until the radiation all clear shows. Watch for the cuckoo in your Perspex panel, or your district touring doctor rings your bell. If before this your air becomes exhausted or if any of your family is critically injured, administer the capsules marked Valley Forge, Red Pocket, and No. 1 Survival Kit for painless death. Catholics will have been instructed by their priests what to do in this eventuality. This announcement is ending. Our president has already given orders for massive retaliation. It will be decisive. Some of us may die. Remember, statistically, it is not likely to be you. All flags are flying, fully dressed on government buildings. The sun is shining. Death is the least we have to fear. We are all in the hands of God. Whatever happens, happens by His will. Now go quickly to your shelters.